Good morning and welcome to Rising. Happy Friday. I know Robbie and I always talk about this weather. It's still dark outside and foggy in DC.
What is happening?
What is happening? Do you feel a way about this weather?
I can't see anything.
We're literally walking through like just clouds, but it's going to be 70 next week. Did you see that?
Well, I'm excited about that, but I already can't drive, and now they're like asking me to drive through a wall of fog.
I know.
Ridiculous.
And then you put your high beams on, everybody, you're going to get people.
We're in trouble.
All right.
Coming up on Rising, President Trump has fired Kristi Noem from her position as Secretary of Homeland Security, and he has already picked a replacement.
Plus, Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales has ended his reelection campaign after pressure from all sides of the aisle admitting an affair with a former staffer.
The U.S. Senate race in Texas on the Republican side is heating up after President Trump put candidate Ken Paxton on notice for some comments he made. But first, Lindsay, what's in your lens?
Let's talk about it. So right now, the war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran is entering a dangerous new phase. And what stands out the most is not just the scale of the conflict, but the absence of an obvious exit. So Israel's military says it has already carried out roughly 2,500 strikes using more than 6,000 weapons. And its top general says the campaign is moving into the, quote, next phase. Donald Trump says the U.S. is, quote, far ahead of schedule in the war effort. But the question that matters the most to most of us is ahead of schedule toward what? Because at the moment, the objectives seem to be shifting. Some officials talk about preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Others talk about dismantling Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. Some openly talk about regime change. And now, after the killing of Iran's longtime supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, there's a new complication. There's a power vacuum. For decades, Khamenei ruled with an iron grip. But the force that helped maintain that control, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is now positioned to become the most powerful actor inside Iran. That raises the possibility that instead of weakening Iran's military influence, the war could actually strengthen the most hardline faction inside the country. At the same time, diplomacy appears nowhere in sight. Iran's foreign minister made that clear in a recent interview with Tom Yamis at NBC News.
Trump has not ruled out boots on the ground in Iran. Are you afraid of a U.S. invasion in your country?
No, we are waiting for them.
You are waiting for the U.S. military to invade the ground troops?
Yes, because we are confident that we can confront them, and that would be a big disaster for them.
So you're saying that Iran is ready and willing to take on the U.S. military if there were to be ground troops?
Well, we were ready for this war even more than the previous war.
See, that's not the language of a country looking for a ceasefire. It's the language of a conflict preparing to dig in. And the U.S. military sounds prepared to do the same. Here was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth yesterday.
We've got no shortage of munitions. Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to.
The problem with wars of endurance is that they rarely stay contained. Already, the costs are spreading far beyond the battlefield. 6 American service members have been killed. More than 1,000 civilians in Iran have reportedly died, including children. One strike collapsed the roof of a school in southern Iran, killing 165 people, mostly girls between the ages of 7 and 12. And the ripple effects are reaching American households too. According to AAA, gas prices have been climbing since the start of the war. Mortgage rates are ticking up amid new inflation fears, and more than 11,000 flights, as you probably have seen across the Middle East, have been canceled completely, leaving thousands of Americans stranded still overseas. But the conflict is also expanding geographically. Thousands of miles away, the war reached Sri Lanka's southern coast after a U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship in nearby waters, forcing local authorities to rescue survivors and treat them in a hospital. It's a stark example of how quickly a regional war can spill into global shipping routes and international waters. In Europe, governments are preparing for the possibility that the conflict could spread even further. After a drone strike hit a military base in Cyprus, European powers announced plans to mobilize defensive forces to protect the island, an EU member state sitting just miles from the Middle East. Even politically, here at home, the ground is shifting. President Trump once campaigned against what he calls endless wars. Now he's leading one without a clear timeline and without Congress placing meaningful limits on the mission. History shows that the hardest wars to end are the ones where the goals keep evolving and the stakes keep expanding. And right now, the conflict is starting to look less like a short military campaign and more like a long, unpredictable struggle with consequences stretching far beyond the Middle East.
All right, well, you have a fellow Panican here. I'm very concerned about this war. I completely agree with both the fact that the Trump administration has thrown out basically spaghetti at the wall to explain why we've done this in the first place. And if it's, 8 to 10 reasons and it's all of those things, that's fine, but that's not the way that it was presented to us. It was the Iranian people need their freedom, and then when that wasn't sufficient for people, it started to be that they were weeks away from nuclear enrichment and potentially even a nuclear weapon, and then it was that the leadership wasn't properly negotiating with the United States, that they weren't negotiating in good faith, and there's no clear plan for what success looks like based on what I've heard from administration officials. Is it total regime change? Is it decapitating the regime but leaving in somebody like a Delcy Rodriguez situation that they have in Venezuela? Is it the Iranian people rising up and taking over their government? We need to be clear about that and what the timeline is before we strike the country and get 6 American service members, probably more, killed.
Right. And I know that something that you and I talk about and even maybe disagree about is the fact that Congress has the power on paper to authorize wars, which they haven't done, as you point out, historically very often. But they do authorize the use of military force in past wars like Afghanistan, when we're convinced that there is an attack against al-Qaeda, and then the world's Congress says yes, we move forward. And so those have been like preemptive conversations to big moves. The problem here is that there wasn't a preemptive conversation that any of Congress really thoroughly understood. And then the fact that we moved forward and made decisions, we made it for so many other countries too, because even I saw a leadership in the UAE sharing a message from a very wealthy businessman in the UAE that directly pointed his comments at President Trump yesterday, like, sir, we want to ask you on the heels of the Board of Peace, as somebody who moved forward and told us and sold us that you were here to do peace. We put billions of our dollars from our Middle Eastern countries toward this idea of peace in the Middle East. How then do you drag us into a war that we didn't ask for? And that's the question, not only that people on our soil are asking, because I know that it's happening from obvious Democratic leadership, but also leaders within MAGA and the Republican Party, but also around the world. And when we think about now that we've involved so many global entities in this, I just don't understand how you justify this unless there was an extreme and immediate threat.
Right. And the immediate threat, apparently, according to both Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Speaker Mike Johnson, Senator Tom Cotton, both of whom were in the Gang of Eight briefing, was that they were worried that Israel was going to strike Iran and that Iran would retaliate against the United States. Why on earth is Israel deciding the timing of our military action? We should be deciding that. We shouldn't be essentially blackmailed by what Israel wants to do. And after that Gang of Eight briefing, we had multiple senators also say that the administration actually didn't tell them that Iran was planning on preemptively striking Israel or the United States. And so that makes it even clearer what the final impetus was for us to decide to launch those strikes on early Saturday morning at around 3 a.m. It wasn't because Iran was going to strike. It wasn't because the U.S. Was trying to stave off their attacks. It was because of Israel.
Right. So I think the president and the administration has some messaging, but a lot of explaining to do, because we know Afghanistan went for 20 years, and I don't think anybody is looking for that to happen again.
No, absolutely not.
Kristi Noem is out at DHS, and why now, and who's going to fill her shoes? We're going to talk about all of it next. A major cabinet shakeup yesterday as President Trump fired Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, the first of his second term.
According to a report from the Wall Street Journal, this was something that Trump had been mulling over for at least a week and was reportedly getting frustrated with the infighting and drama in her agency. He announced the change in leadership on Truth Social, writing in a post, "Secretary Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, will be moving to be special envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere we are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland. Noem reportedly got the call notifying her that she had been fired just moments before taking the stage at a law enforcement event in Nashville. But she didn't comment on it there, instead opting to respond on X with a post of her own, writing, "Thank you at POTUS Trump for appointing me as the special envoy for the Shield of the Americas. The Western Hemisphere is absolutely critical for U.S. security. In this new role, I will be able to build on the partnerships and national security expertise I forged over the last 13 months as Secretary of Homeland Security."
Now, Noem has long been a target of Democrats who have criticized immigration enforcement tactics under her leadership. But it was her answers to Congress during hearings this week that seemed to be the final straw for President Trump. During that Senate hearing on Tuesday, Noem was asked about this ad campaign that heavily featured, well, her.
I'm Kristi Noem. I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security.
That campaign reportedly cost more than $200 million, a fact that Republican Senator John Kennedy pressed her on, and she said the president approved. Take a listen.
You have spent $220 million running television advertisements that feature you prominently.
Sir, the president tasked me with getting the message out to the country.
The president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president know you were going to do this?
Yes.
He did.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That response reportedly infuriated the president, who disputed that he approved it. He told Reuters, quote, "I never knew anything about it." And then there's the allegations that she had an affair with her top aide, Corey Lewandowski. She was pressed about that in the House hearing on Wednesday, to which led to this exchange.
Have you had sexual relations with Corey Lewandowski?
Mr. Chairman, I am shocked that we're going down and peddling tabloid garbage in this committee today.
It is okay for you to be offended by the question.
It is okay for you to be offended by the question.
But it is also a real question.
Now, Noem never gave a definitive answer to the question. Just a day later, Trump announced that, well, she was fired.
In that same Truth Social post, Trump announced his pick for her replacement will be Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin. He called Mullin a, quote, MAGA warrior and former undefeated professional MMA fighter. Markwayne truly gets along well with people and knows the wisdom and courage required to advance our America First agenda. He also said Mullin is set to take the role of acting secretary starting at the end of this month. It's still unclear when any confirmation hearings will begin. The response to Noem's firing and Mullin being tapped as her replacement came quickly, with most Republicans showing support for the move. Senator Lindsey Graham posting on X in part, "I appreciate Secretary Noem's service to our country. However, I think it was time for a change. President Trump could not have chosen a better candidate to be Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security than Senator Markwayne Mullin."
But Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom was much more irreverent about the news, his press office writing in a post, quote, "Bye, girl." And as for Mullin, he wrote in a separate post, in part, "Markwayne Mullin could not remember if we were at war this week," and said, quote, "I don't want reality at a Senate hearing about race. This erratic, unstable man is now in charge of Homeland Security."
Oh, the drama.
The drama of it all. You know what's so fascinating to me? I saw a Meghan McCain tweet that I really appreciated, where she talked about each episode of Game of Thrones costing about $15 million. Mm-hmm. And you know the production value for most people in production is like a chef's kiss for that. But Kristi Noem spending $220 million on a commercial. She's like, what in the, I'm lost. What were you doing? Because it doesn't look better than Game of Thrones, whatever you were doing. So I'm confused about why you spent that and how you're justifying spending the gross GDP of a small country.
And she used the emergency authorization to basically bypass the normal contract bidding process. And they used a subcontracting process to make sure that an old political ally of hers was the one that was actually getting the money for this. So that was what made it even more scandalous, and why you had senators on the Republican side like John Kennedy really grilling her for this. And the Daily Caller has done some reporting on Noem's ouster. They've talked to several administration officials. one of which had this quote, which was pretty spicy.
I love when you have some
I know.
tea.
It's laughable that Kristi is trying to blame her own self-inflicted issues on someone else. The issues that led to Kristi's replacement were a result of her own wrongdoings, not a lack of support from the White House. And that was in response to a second administration official who said that Kristi had felt that she was thrown under the bus after the Minneapolis situation and that she wasn't getting proper support from the White House. And apparently she did go to the White House and ask for more support in the beginning of this year, which Trump gave to her. But then when Minneapolis boiled over, he said, okay, enough is enough.
Right. I think the response, something else that stuck out to me from that hearing was Alex Preddy's family basically asking for an apology or however she wanted to address the situation. Even if it's not, I know a lot of time with the hearings, I think we agree upon this, that they're used from both sides of the aisle to clip out moments to try to embarrass the other side and then fundraise. But even in private, a conversation between any of the families as the department leader who called and described these people as domestic terrorists in both occasions within minutes of the incidents without full information. Even Tom Homan, who's strict on the border and strict on immigration policy, was like, let's pause, let's do some investigations, and let's discuss. The fact that she wasn't able to just acknowledge that there may be a conversation that could have been had or a pause that may have been taken and to do it back to back, to me just showed that nothing was going to ever change or no discernment was going to be shown down the line. And I think that that is a little bit alarming too, just to think like at the end of the day, when we wanted immigration to take place, we didn't want Americans to die, no matter where you fall as this investigation plays itself out. And so we certainly don't want the leader of the Department of Homeland Security immediately saying things that are not even backed up by the President of the United States.
I was always concerned about her lack of law enforcement experience. And then going back to her time as South Dakota governor, one of the things that Republicans were really suspicious of her over was that during the big backlash to transgender ideology, she was presented with a bill from the Republicans in the state House and Senate that would have prohibited men from participating in women's sports on the collegiate level. And she had talked a big game about this, but then refused to sign the bill, saying, well, then the NCAA is going to pull tournaments from our state and we're going to lose money. And the conservative reaction was, well, why are you worried about money? Like, this is the right thing to do. And so she was a very politically calculating person, it seemed. And these advertisements were for her to do like a beauty pageant type of shoot, right?
I saw them all over the place.
She's on the horse with her, her plaid shirt on and her cowgirl hat, and she's got the last. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I know we have to go, but do you think there's a hesitancy in this second time that Trump's president for him to fire cabinet members? Because moving her over, she said, I got a new job. And everyone else said fire.
And he did that to Michael Waltz, too.
So I want to know what that's all about.
Advisor. I think that there was the perception in the first admin that things were very chaotic because there were a lot of exits in the first year, and he's probably trying to avoid this idea that it's that all of these staff members were not qualified or not the best as he describes them, and so he just keeps them around. But I mean, the other quick thing I'll just mention is that Kristi Noem apparently had a very bad relationship with Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, who's known as the Ice Queen. Mm-hmm. She apparently tried to get Susie and Trump's other campaign manager, Chris LaCivita, fired during the 2024 campaign. And if you are having constant tension with the Chief of Staff who has the president's ear, that's probably never going to end well.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll see what happens next with Markwayne Mullin, right?
Yeah, we will. Up next, more than 20 states are suing President Trump in an attempt to block his latest tariffs. Don't go anywhere.
More than 20 states have filed lawsuits against President Trump for new tariffs he imposed. In February, the Supreme Court ruled that Trump's tariffs using an emergency powers law was illegal.
This time, the president is using a different method, invoking the tariffs under something called Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. Simply put, that statute lets Trump to impose tariffs up to 15% for up to 5 months, unless Congress were to extend them.
The attorney generals of California, Arizona, New York, and Oregon are leading the charge. California Attorney General Rob Bonta said in a statement, quote, This is not new terrain for California, but it is exasperating. Why is President Trump, who ran on the promise of making life more affordable for families, breaking the law to raise the cost of living for Americans? Section 122 has never been invoked, and the attorneys general argue that the statute can't be used for sweeping import taxes, only specific, limited ones.
The White House, of course, is backing the president and argue he's acting within his power. Spokesman Kush Desai said, quote, "The president is using his authority granted by Congress to address fundamental international payments problems and to deal with our country's large and serious balance of payments deficits. The administration will vigorously defend the president's action in court." Meanwhile, some of these Democratic states suing Trump are part of another tariff fight over refunds.
Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield urged in a statement, quote, "The focus right now should be on paying people back, not doubling down on illegal tariffs. Prices on basic things like groceries, clothing, and other essentials have all been skyrocketing. At some point, the bills become unmanageable." I mean, there's so much here. I think the president is very consistent on not wanting to take an L in any way, right? So if he made tariffs his whole entire life story as his first part of this election, he won the election and now he's doubling down. And so, you know, and actually I might be on an island alone here, but the idea about the tariffs is that to make us rely way less on foreign nations is, to me, a noble one. But when you scale back about the timing, the fact that Americans are uncomfortable financially right now, and then add to the fact that you're also at the same time, while you're pushing these new tariffs, embarking on a war that's driving prices up, as I mentioned in my lens, you are completely abandoning the promise of making things more affordable for Americans. And this tariff choice is completely by choice because states are saying you're using another thing just to be right rather than try to figure out what's best for Americans.
Yeah, so I think on the tariff question, what Trump did that was a mistake was he did not do targeted, consistent tariffs on key industries that, one, the United States has the capability of manufacturing themselves, and two, are important for national security reasons. So, for example, steel, chips, oil and gas, et cetera, like all of those things make sense. But the U.S. is probably not going to be in the business of making like cheap plastic toys because we simply don't have a cheap labor class, especially with the deportation of illegal immigrants, which I would argue is a good thing, to do that effectively and cheaply enough that you're actually making a profit on those goods. And so for him to do the sort of countrywide tariffs and then he was suddenly dropping and raising them depending on how the countries responded, it just led to a lot of economic uncertainty that didn't just impact our trading partners, but impacted us here at home.
And also there are real big box retailers that are saying, listen, because of the uncertainty and because of the actual prices going up, we had to pass those costs to our consumers. And so even states, I believe J.B. Pritzker was the one who issued a past due bill to the president saying pay back our state. And, you know, the president is going to be in a lot of mess if there isn't a road to paying states back.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. A Republican congressman officially dropping his bid for re-election this morning after a scandal over an affair with a staffer. That's coming up. Stick around.
A House Republican is dropping his re-election bid this year after pressure from House leadership to do so.
Representative Tony Gonzales is officially out of the race for the Texas 23rd congressional seat after he was accused of having an affair with one of his staffers, who later died by suicide. Those allegations stemmed in part from a leaked text exchange between the congressman and the former aide, where she tells him several times that he's going, quote, too far, and raises concerns that she was only hired because he was attracted to her. The aide's husband later revealed that her mental health declined sharply after the affair ended, and she was found critically burned near her home last September. Just this week, Gonzales acknowledged for the first time that he did have that affair and denied that he had anything to do with her death in an interview with conservative radio host Joe Pags. Take a listen.
I made a mistake, and I had a lapse in judgment, and there was a lack of faith, and I take full responsibility for those actions. Since then, I've reconciled with my wife, Angel. I've asked God to forgive me. This whole notion that I had anything to do with her death. I had absolutely nothing to do with her tragic passing. And in fact, I was shocked just as much as everyone else.
Several of his colleagues have called for Gonzales' resignation in recent weeks, which he has declined to do, but that hasn't stopped Congress from taking action. Republican leadership announced yesterday that the Ethics Committee has launched an investigation into the affair and applauded Gonzales for cooperating. They also urged him to drop his bid for re-election, which he did this morning.
It comes as the House just voted down a bill that would have made public all reports of sexual misconduct or harassment against members of Congress. The bill, spearheaded by South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, was drafted in response to the leaked text messages between Gonzales and his former aide. And Mace was not quiet in her criticism of the more than 300 members of the House who voted to kill her bill. She launched a series of posts on X condemning her colleagues who voted against the bill, several of which named the nay voters, and directly after the vote, they wrote, quote, "Our resolution to expose predators in Congress was killed. Your government is more concerned with protecting predators than protecting women. The establishment watches out for itself. Remember this when they ask for your trust. This is what corruption looks like." But some members who voted against it pushed back. When asked on X why she voted no, Democratic darling Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez explained in a lengthy post, quote, "The idea is good, but the text itself was rushed and not thought through. It violated a lot of standard practices to protect survivors and due process. If the text was clean, I think you'd get a lot more support. As a survivor, I know why the vast majority of women never report at all. And a lot of those reasons, even if unintentionally or inadvertently, were included here." So I think that was a fair, to turn around legislation like this quickly is fair when you think about the nuances. I guess on its face value, to protect women, it seems like that should be an automatic yes. But if you read it and it's kind of outing anybody who maybe didn't want to be known for something that happened to them in Congress, it could turn into a total, just a poor experience for people that are trying to further their career and were attacked in that way by somebody who's preying on them in a higher position, which is already against the rules in the House.
Right. So and our taxpayer dollars go towards these investigations. And so I think if they are found to be credible, then they should be released. But what I don't want is for people who are falsely accused to have their names dragged for under this bill when they didn't really do anything wrong. If the investigation finds that they're cleared, then I don't think that there's a legitimate reason for them to have this accusation released and the public sort of turning it into a witch hunt. On the Tony Gonzales question, oh my gosh.
I know.
Okay,
It's terrible.
I've been following this story for a while because I heard from some people who are familiar with Texas politics that apparently this affair was kind of a well-known thing around Texas circles. And when she died by self-immolation, people started sharing the fact that they had apparently been having a romantic relationship, which he has since confirmed. Initially, his office would not answer any questions about it. And it's just a really tragic story. Apparently what happened is that her husband found out about the affair, left her, tried to take the kids. She spiraled. She set herself on fire in her backyard. There's actually security footage of it from her home cameras. And according to the autopsy that we obtained, she had burns on almost 100% of her body. Wow. Just horrific. And this guy didn't even go to her funeral. He didn't even go to her funeral. And then throughout the initial primary race against his challenger, Brandon Herrera, was talking about this story as if it were a politically opportunistic smear and not just an acknowledgement that he's a bad person.
Right.
Just really disgusting all around.
And I really uniformly think there should be a call for internally within your own party. If somebody is doing the wrong thing, it shouldn't just be, and I know there are some people in the Republican Party that called him to resign, but not only don't run, an overwhelming call to resign immediately. The only problem with possibly him resigning is the fact that there's a loophole in ethics investigations, as you know. Like if somebody opens the investigation and they're going through with it and the public doesn't get a chance to see the results, it would be because he probably left office, and so the investigation doesn't continue. And so there's a point of keeping him there to continue the investigation, but even if he leaves prior to it being resolved, the public may never see the results if they wanted to know what the full dots were connected to see if there's any cause for criminal look into this further, because the point of these investigations is to lay out the information for further action if it needs to be taken. And I just think with this, we have little accountability, because not only does he have the confidence to continue doing podcasts and not resign, but also I'm not sure how much we'll get from this ethics investigation.
It's also wild that amid all of these reports that he was still able to advance to a runoff in the first place. It should have been a no-brainer that people did not vote for him, and it's very disturbing that he was still able to get in that runoff threshold against Brandon Herrera. Some of the polls that I was seeing in the weeks leading up to it had Herrera up like 15, 20 points. So I don't know if it was just name ID, people didn't hear about it, but I'm glad that I did the right thing and dropped out of this race. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it was due to political pressure.
Right.
I mean, who knows whether or not he was doing this for the right reasons, leaving the race, but just this whole story is so disturbing.
And I think everybody has to have a barometer for like what morality is the minimum that they will accept. And so even if a candidate has a list of things that they may advance as far as positions or ideas or bills that you really are into and the messaging that they're sending, is it worth losing the morality to that level that he has displayed already? The character, to me, matters a lot about leadership. And as people continue to pursue opportunities, I know the world has gotten very like showy with the antics and everything, but we have to remember like real people are impacted. When you talked about her husband and the kids that they have, and the fact that her death was so horrific, and the fact that he didn't even attend the funeral, I mean, these are all moral failures. And I think that that is something that people who liked his policies that maybe, or didn't know about them, maybe it shows us all that we could spend a little more time researching who's running, but also spend a little more time holding people to the fire as far as being morally decent when we put them in big positions.
And I'm not even the type of person that like looks to a politician to be, my moral guideline, but I think there is like a basic level that you would expect from someone who is serving in public office. Not necessarily because they need to be a role model or anything, but just because the decision making here was so poor. If that's your level of judgment, how does that impact the way that you're operating politically on the Hill?
Right, exactly. As the GOP primary for Texas Senate race heats up, Attorney General Ken Paxton says he would consider dropping out, but only if certain demands are met. Stay with us.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he would consider dropping out of the Texas Senate race if certain demands are met. Paxton is currently in a heated battle for the Republican nomination with Senator John Cornyn.
The two contenders were forced into a runoff election set for May 26th. Following Tuesday's primary results, in a poll on X, Paxton laid out his conditions for dropping out, writing in part, quote, "The Save America Act is the most important bill the U.S. Senate could ever pass, and I'm committed to helping President Trump get it done. I would consider dropping out of this race if Senate leadership agrees to lift the filibuster and pass the Save America Act. John Cornyn is a coward who has refused to support abolishing the filibuster to pass this bill." John Cornyn responded to Paxton's post, writing, quote, "I repeat what I have said consistently. I support the bill and have encouraged Senate Republicans to get it done."
This ultimatum comes after President Trump said on Wednesday that he would soon make an official endorsement for the race. And he said that whichever candidate he doesn't endorse should drop out. In a Truth Social post, he said they need to totally focus on beating State Rep James Tallarico on the Democrat side.
Now, Cornyn is one of the main backers of the Save America Act, which would require documentary proof of citizenship when registering to vote. But Paxton also said he won't drop out unless the Senate agrees to end the filibuster. And on that issue, Cornyn has been much more hesitant. Back in 2022, he argued that eliminating the filibuster would, quote, break the Senate by giving too much power to the majority. More recently, Cornyn said in November, quote, "There's many good reasons to preserve the filibuster. I think we ought to consider all options. My position hasn't really changed, but I'm willing to listen."
Meanwhile, on the Democrat side, James Tallarico is getting ready for the November election after defeating Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in Tuesday's primary. But following his victory, Tallarico has been the subject of outrage from some on the right, especially when it comes to how he presents his religious beliefs. Videos from several years ago have resurfaced online and gone viral this week, where Tallarico argues God is non-binary and Jesus Christ was a radical feminist. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wrote on X, a candidate for statewide office in Texas claiming God is non-binary, that dog won't hunt. And right-wing commentator Matt Walsh says, it's tough because I really want to gloat over Jasmine Crockett's loss, but the guy who beat her is somehow 100 times worse in every way.
I was saying this when they were running against each other. I think the biggest difference between Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico was just the way that they presented to the public.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually the policy.
No, not at all.
So I was kind of like, everybody's like, oh, he's so moderate. It's like, no, Jasmine just is a firecracker. And that's what her position was, intentionally to have this response, like the Newsom approach to President Trump in that way. And Tallarico was like, oh, I can walk across the aisle. But the policy was really
very similar.
Very
yes,
similar.
I agree.
So I think like, nobody should be shocked, but I guess everyone who was introduced to Tallarico more recently, that because of the Colbert interview and because of, the way he's able, he's a politician and a good one, the way he's able to,
shift. I think people were sort of lured into a false sense of security by a lot of the media coverage of Tallarico that did insinuate that he was more moderate than Jasmine Crockett, and he's just like a folksy white guy who's like a pastor or whatever it is. Pastor in training, I don't know. But now that some of his older statements are coming out, they're like, okay, we've been duped.
Well, he's former school teacher. He has like some of those things that they tried with, and I know it's a terrible example because of Minnesota and the timing, but
no,
Tim Walz,
I'm glad you said this. I've been calling him the Texas Tim Walz.
Yeah, he has some of those things. Texas is a really hard state to try to do this in, where the policies don't actually get combed through, right? Texas is a really conservative state. It's one of the states where Democrats were gaining some traction in 2020. In 2024, with Kamala, they lost a lot of that traction. And so has always been eyes that Texas could possibly turn more purple, as it hasn't in years, but it could do something different. But it really would take the right candidate that understands the place. Like, it's not New York and Mamdani. Like, New York is a very blue place. So you have to have the right candidate to meet the moment where it could possibly be a more purple state.
Yeah, let's get into the Ken Paxton, John Cornyn fight, because this is really fascinating too. So the reason that Ken Paxton sent out this tweet saying, well, I'll drop out, but only if you all lift the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act, that's because pretty much every report, and I've been hearing this too from sources, is that Trump intends on endorsing Cornyn.
Okay.
And the reason why is because he thinks that Cornyn is more electable in the general against Tallarico because he is a little bit more moderate than Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton comes with a lot of baggage. He's had corruption scandals, and he has a situation with his family where he was treating his wife very poorly. We'll just put it that way. And so Cornyn is a safer bet for Trump if he wants to keep the Senate majority. But that has angered a lot of conservatives in Texas and members of Trump's base who say, well, Paxton is ideologically more in line with Make America Great Again, so why would we not go with him? The polls only show a slight difference in electability between Cornyn and Paxton. But that's basically where we're at. And so Paxton is throwing it out there like, okay, I'll do what Trump wants. I'll drop out if he endorses Cornyn, but you have to do this thing first. And I don't understand why he's so hung up on getting rid of the filibuster, because the Senate can pass the SAVE Act without changing the rules. They can do the talking filibuster, where the minority party, each member would have the opportunity to make 2 speeches over a legislative session. If the Senate doesn't formally adjourn, then that legislative session, or legislative day rather, can last basically as long as they want it to. And you just have to tire out the Democrats, let them all give their speeches, and then eventually you can get to the point where you've exceeded all of those requirements and you can pass the bill. But the problem is that nobody in the Senate wants to do any darn work. They're all lazy. And this is consistent with all politicians, is they're all lazy. They work 4 days a week. They're constantly in recess. It's ridiculous. Just stay there for a few days and get the darn thing done.
So what I will say is that from now, which is March through May, Tallarico, and beyond May, and when they decide who the candidate is on the Republican side, Tallarico has an opportunity to build up whomever his base in Texas might be, and to decide what his new messaging will be, or how he will garner the crowd or even get apathetic voters out to support him. But what will happen for the next 2 months if Cornyn and Paxton get in this runoff is that we're going to see probably a lot of nasty advertising and a lot of combative things that bring up all the things that you alluded to, specifically regarding Paxton. So there'll be this big disconnect between, obviously, the ads towards Cornyn will be very much about how he's not aligned with President Trump. And obviously the ads toward Paxton will be very much about how he has cheating allegations, securities frauds allegations. You know, there's like, come on,
There's a lot
going on, right? His divorce is messy, so it'll just be like, do you want this type of person running your country? And I don't think that Republicans who know that Texas was swaying in a direction that probably wasn't ideal for them, besides the last election over the last few years, thinks that it's the time to do that, which is why you see the president not endorsing someone who he likes better, but endorsing someone that will likely win, like you see him do with Lisa Murkowski, when it makes sense in states where they're looking for somebody who's not going to be filled with drama. It makes sense. And so it's either lose the position or support who you think will win. And polls are showing that in an actual race to beat Tallarico prior to all this news coming out, because obviously it's going to be recreational, pull skeletons out your closet for Tallarico now that he's the candidate. But if he's able to have a run like he did up to this, to beating Jasmine Crockett, you know, he could continue this momentum and try to figure out how to get people who want something different out to vote for him.
Yeah, and Cornyn also has the benefit of incumbency. He has the National Republican Senatorial Committee committed to spending tons of money for him, which they already have.
I think more than like 100 million, right?
It's a ton of money. I think it was like 22-1. He outspent Ken Paxton.
Right, I meant overall for the whole race. Yeah, they already spent a lot.
Of course, yeah. So, I mean, if you want someone who has all that money, that's helpful too, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be some drama until we figure it out.
3 major fast food chains are beefing over who has the best burger. We'll be right back after this. The CEOs of 3 fast food giants, McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's, are beefing over who has the best burger.
Wendy's U.S. President, Pete Zirkin, recently posted a video on LinkedIn of himself enjoying a double Baconator.
In the clip, Zirkin criticizes Burger King's flame-broiled patties while praising Wendy's flat grill cooking.
Then, while he's dispensing a frozen dessert, Zirkin points out that Wendy's Frosty machines are, quote, always working. And I hear them laughing in the control room, an apparent reference to the joke about McDonald's ice cream machines, which honestly are frequently not working.
This burger beef began in February when McDonald's CEO, Chris Kempczynski, posted a video introducing its new Big Arch burger. Let's take a look.
All right, the moment of truth. It's distinctively McDonald's. Only McDonald's could do this type of burger, but it also is unlike anything else on our menu. It's a delicious product.
That video went viral as social media users started questioning if Kempczynski finished the burger. Burger King commented on that video, writing, quote, "We couldn't finish it either."
Burger King on Tuesday posted a video of its president, Tom Curtis, eating its signature Whopper cheeseburger on Instagram. And Burger King wrote in the caption, "Thought we'd replay this."
Online users cheered Curtis for taking a big bite. One said, quote, "Burger King's marketing team saw an opportunity and ate."
Although on Wednesday, after Wendy's posted their CEO nearly eating the entire entree, some social media users applauded that move, saying, "This is awesome. You definitely win CEO eat their own-a-thon."
This is classic. First of all, Wendy's has like some of the best social media.
They're very good.
Every time. They're on the minute, on the nose. Yes. Which one do you actually like the most? I know we probably stay away from fast food at this point.
It's hard for me to talk about today because it's a Lent Friday, so I don't get to enjoy any beef today. But I am just a classic McDonald's girl.
Really?
So it's like the whole experience. It's very nostalgic. The fries are great. But if we're just talking about the burger, I have to say Wendy's is very underrated.
I was going to say Wendy's. Okay. I had one right by my high school, and it was a treat if we got to go off of campus, whatever you called it at the time, to get Wendy's.
Theirs just taste the freshest, and they're always hot. Like, you get a McDonald's burger, it's like the sad, thin patty, and it's always kind of lukewarm.
Right.
But just the whole product, I don't know. There's something about McDonald's that will just always resonate with me, because I guess I grew up eating it. I don't know. So that's like the working class man's burger.
It is. It is. You notice that President Trump often has it. I think
that's
he gave it to the Olympics team recently.
He loves McDonald's.
He loves McDonald's.
His meal's crazy. Have you ever heard what his meal is?
No, what is it?
It's like 2 Big Macs, 2 fish fillets, and a chocolate shake, I think.
Wait, in one
no
sitting?
Fries. I think that's right. Maybe it's one of each.
Oh,
but
wow.
Yeah, but he loves the fish fillet, apparently. He does not get fries, and he has, like, the big shake.
Remember the McRib? That was pretty random.
They brought it back for a while recently. Okay, so as much as this CEO's video kind of creeped me out, I did not get good vibes. He did bring back the snack wrap, so I have to give him some props for that, because I love the snack wrap. but they changed the tender that's inside of it.
Oh.
It used, they used to have the chicken selects. The new
Yeah.
ones are not as good. So I don't know about this guy.
Chick-fil-A needs to be added in here because I heard they got yelled at for changing their fries recently and they
Really?
brought back the old recipe. So if everybody could just stick to the script around when we were young, everybody liked that
Yeah,
just fine.
exactly.
Don't change too much stuff up.
Okay, controversial opinion perhaps. I'm a big fan of the Burger King chicken fries.
Oh no, I never got into those. I can't
Yeah.
believe you're saying this.
I
right
know.
now.
I knew
That's
that you
ridiculous.
were going to say that.
That's out of line. That's ridiculous.
It's such a disgusting thing. Like, it's just like minced chicken in the shape of a fry. Disgusting.
But you still dip it in and have a field day. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're talking about this. Now I'm gonna probably eat like something terrible for me today because
I guess I'm going to
You
get
have
a
to wait
fish
till-
fillet.
Listen, we have some news to
Classic
report
ones. Yeah, we
that
do.
is gonna, not be my favorite news, but I'm very, very excited for you. So I'll let you take the floor and
Thank
let the
you.
viewers know.
Yes. So today is my last day as the Friday co-host of Rising. I was recently promoted to editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, which I'm super excited about. We have big plans there, and I think it's going to be a great time for us. But part of that is that I do not have the time to give to this program, and so unfortunately, this is my last day. We will still hopefully be back occasionally, or I will be back occasionally as a fill-in host or even as a guest. So this will not be the last time you see me, but I am obviously disappointed, Lindsay, that we won't get to have our normal Fridays.
And you know what? I want to tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, particularly debating with people. And I'll tell you that you sharpened my sword. So I'm really happy to have sat next to you because I can't come here and be, taking my day off. If I'm going to debate you, I have to have information and facts. And I think that that's a great thing.
Wow.
And so as you continue your journey writing and, keeping people's feet to the fire, I love the conversations. I love to be challenged. And hopefully, we can do this again when you
I
have some
hope
free
so.
time since you're the boss over there running the show.
Well, I really appreciate that. That means a lot for you to say that. And we always have such a great time on Fridays. You're a lovely person, and I'm going to miss you very much. And I'm going to miss all of you. Thank you for, 3 years I've been doing this.
It's been that long.
I
You've been
know.
longer than I've been here. What are we going to do?
Unbelievable. 3 years. Wow.
I know. The viewers are going to miss you. I know they're going to be in the comments like, first you tased the set, now this. What's wrong with you?
Bring back the desk. All right, that's going to do it for us on Rising Live. My last time. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Bye, y'all.